It's a delight to be with you today in this special place, this new library. I have very mixed emotions about libraries. When I was growing up in Greenville, South Carolina, in the midst of real barbaric segregation and apartheid, we could not use the public library, called at that time the White Library. I remember coming home from school at Christmas time and had to do a speech with 25 annotated bibliographies, and I went to the colored branch of the library, and Mrs. Smith said that we do not have enough books to fulfill your needs, but I will have you sent down to the Central Library. The lady, the librarian, is my friend. And so she wrote a note and she made the call, and I ran all the way down to the library, and I was told that I'll get the books to you in 6 days. I said, that is too long. I'll have to go back to school early if it takes 6 days. It's just the two of us in the library. And by that time, she had two police who just happened to stop by and knew we were coming. And I said, well, since there are two of us, can I go down in the stacks and just get my books? She said 6 days. Then the police said, you heard what she said. Then I got the message. And I went out the back door and I cried. I wept. I said, I want to use this library. This summer, I felt so pained and so insulted. And that summer, July of 1960, 7 classmates of mine and I went to that library, and we were arrested trying to use the public library in Greenville, South Carolina. And so when I think about libraries, always have a certain chill. I hope this is not one of my library days. But I'm delighted to see such a commitment here in Birmingham to build a library of this quality. Learning and literacy are keys to liberation. Learning and literacy are keys to liberation and to expanding our minds and our consciousness. One can be in a hole and dream of a mountaintop and read and get there. One can exercise a thought process and get beyond what one is limited to physically. There's something powerful about injecting the mind with the oxygen of learning, and libraries are key to learning and liberation and leadership. Most often people who may have the greatest needs and greatest passions can't lead because you can't lead, you can't teach what you don't know, and you can't lead where you don't go. So leaders of substance are, for the most part, literate people. You show me a Nelson Mandela, a Oliver Tambo, I'll show you two young trained lawyers. You show me a Mahatma Gandhi, I will show you a trained lawyer. You show me a Martin Luther King Jr., I will show you a PhD in systematic theology. Learning and literacy are keys to liberation, and so it is that we must preserve the integrity of this place and the freedom to learn and not be victimized by propaganda from libraries. It gives us a sense of our humanity, for no matter what our social economic status may be, our humanness, our humanity makes us as one. I remember when I first went to South Africa in 1979 and got in quite by chance with the National Council of Churches, and it was in the height of the ugliest part of the apartheid regime, and things were getting intense. And I was naive enough to think I could get into South Africa without being noticed, and somehow I ended up on the press list that I was coming. There was a lot of galley of press were gathered, and so they said, why are you here? I said, I come here to see friends. That's not why you're really here. So Came to visit churches. Why are you really here? I came to see the country for myself. Why are you really here? For the reason I said that I am really here. They said, now, well, what's your opinion about our system? And so I said, well, I was searching for a way to sound conservative, which almost gave me an aneurysm trying to get there. I said, well, I believe in human rights for all human beings measured by one yardstick. What? That became a frightening, threatening idea to apartheid, the idea of human rights for all human beings measured by one yardstick was antithetical to a system built upon a race supremacy. And so it is that we learn these values, learn literacy and learning in libraries. We also learn to live one with the other. We have, over these years, coming from our various tribes and places and nation states, we have learned to survive apart. Now we have a higher calling than surviving apart, but learning how to live together. The lower animals can survive apart in their small places. We who are just a little less than God, a little lower than the angels, we have a higher calling than surviving apart in my Hindu-ness, in my Christian-ness, in my Jewishness. We have a higher calling than learning to survive apart, learning to live together as brothers and sisters and not dying apart as fools. Learn to live under one big tent where all are included and none are in the margins. And within that one big tent, many languages, many places, many faces, many languages, but one message. In whatever language one speaks, one wants drinkable water. One wants to be adequately housed. One wants a healthy body and a developed mind. By whatever language, the message is fundamentally the same. The numerators may vary a bit, but the common denominator is that we are human beings learning to live together and not survive apart. And what's admirable about Operation Black Vote is this attempt to get people to affirm the worth that they have and to build coalition, because blackness is not all that we have. In many ways, what's good for blacks is good for all of the UK. What do blacks want except the right to vote and to be inspired to vote and for that vote to matter enough to change priorities in a great nation such as this? Want to have a job. In this great nation, 60% of black youth are unemployed. And the combination of a lack of access to the best of schools and lack of access to a job drives the jail population. So on the one hand, there's the glory of the royalty of the country. There's the glory of a developed country. But then, and with all of the glory of the country, if 5,000 were admitted to Oxford 2 years ago, only one, the African-bred Brit, that is not natural, though it's normal, but it is subnormal to the human family. There's something about that suggests that is suggestive of something that's lacking. The country so great. You have 5,000 Oxfordian freshmen and one African Brit in that class. It hurts everybody. For it gives those who are in a false sense of superiority and gives those who are out a false sense of inferiority. And yet our mission is to learn to live together. And I say it's normal, but it's not natural. There's something missing. What is driving a process where at the end of the road, only one qualifies out of 5,000 in the nation so great? Why? When you look at the great soccer, as you would call it, football teams here in London, why on that team do you have such a multiracial mix? Why do you have black and white playing together? Why do you have blacks from the worst of social conditions able to excel and become great, whether it is soccer in UK, football, basketball, baseball in America, track, tennis. Why have we achieved so much in the athletic realm that those would try to marginalize it and make the case that there's some kind of superiority physically? For so long, that was used as the basis for denying access, that there was a special gene. That never was the truth. Why are we so good at what's so hard to do? Because on that soccer field, on that tennis court, on that basketball court, on that track field, what's significant is the rules. Whenever the playing field is even and the rules are public and the goals are clear and the referee is fair and the score is transparent, we can make it. Whenever the playing field is even, 10 yards for all first downs, as it were. You don't have where you run 8 yards for a first down because you inherited some yards. You got royal yards. And some of us have 12 yards. Whenever it's 10 yards for all first downs, and 3 points for all field goals, and 6 points for all touchdowns. Say whenever the playing field is even, and the rules are public, and the goals are clear, and the referee is fair, and the score is transparent, we can make it. Those rules must apply to access to education, health care, jobs, and contracts in every phase of life to make a country great. We did not know how good soccer could be until everybody could play. In America, we did not know how good baseball could be until everybody could play. We don't know how good the mental capacity of Brits are until everybody can function and have a chance to grow. Because boards of education distribute books, but God distributes gifts, and they're distributed all over town. You just never know. Somebody who has the most awful beginning could be the one who has the key to cure cancer, or AIDS, or some dreaded disease. So somebody in the strangest places. It may be from Brixton. It may be from Bethlehem. It may be from Nazareth in Galilee. It may be from segregated Georgia in America. It may be from some way out place in South Africa. We never know who has that special gift endowed by God to take all of us to higher ground. And so it is that we must believe that God finds in us that special somethingness. As I look into your faces today and I think about Operation Black Vote and the emergence of the margin of victory in great elections. And think about the power coming through a legitimate legal democratic process. Great victories are won by margins. John Kennedy beat Nixon by 112,000 votes, less than 1 vote per precinct. Margins. Jimmy Carter beat Ford by 1,700,000. Nixon beat Humphrey by 500,000. Bush beat Gore by 512 votes. That's power in the margin. And so you've emerged now with a vote. And that vote is the key to determining jurors. That vote is the key to determine who is elected. In more than 100 cities around this country, you now have the power to be a part of the process in a legitimate sense. And so you must find in this new power the ability to make the country better and determine its priorities. And, of course, our power is beyond our numbers. So our power is beyond our numbers. Our power is in our vision. Our power is in our values. When one is playing for your favorite athletic team, you don't limit the score just for their ethnicity. The impact of that person unleashed is greater than its ethnic numbers. And so it is that the key is coalition. As I think about this year, we've celebrated an awful lot of 50 years after the March on Washington and after what's called the Dream Speech. 9 years ago, Dr. King and the group of leaders came to Ghana to watch the celebration of Nkrumah becoming the head of state of Ghana. We had just ended the legal apartheid decision in America in 1954. In 1955, there was a boycott to verify the validity of the law. And we won the boycott. We also won the legal interpretation, the beginning of the end of legal apartheid in our country. And Dr. King emerges out of that struggle, a 26-year-old literate young man. Let us not forget, as we leave him at the Dream, living under legal segregation, where he had to go to the back of the bus and had to go to segregated schools. Even in those conditions, at age 14, he was writing an essay on the Negro and the Constitution at age 14. At age 15, he was in high school. He finished high school at age 19. He finished his seminary degree at age 22. He got his PhD at 26. He was a literate man of course. He emerges out of the struggle in Montgomery, able to interpret its broader meaning. For some people, it meant that if Rosa Parks had to leave the back of the bus or be arrested, they should apologize to her. For some, it meant that for people hurting, get her a podiatrist. He said, no, the issue here is a principle bigger than where she sat. The issue is as a sign above the driver's head that reads colored seat from the rear and whites from the front, and those who violate will be punished by law. We must remove that sign. It is symbolic of indecency and barbarism, where you're judged by your color and not by your fare, not by your person. So he saw something bigger than physical pain. He saw the big issue of one big tent. So in 57, there was another test of that law, and kids in Little Rock had to go to school on the armed guard. The same year that Ghana found its way in independence, and there emerged out of that Nkrumah, a man trained at Lincoln University in America, in Pennsylvania. And then the students began to sit in 1960 as they began to change laws by the sheer power of their nonviolent bodies. And so we struggled. And by 1963, the bombings were intensifying, and the resistance to change was intensifying. And so early in that year, Dr. King was arrested in Birmingham, Alabama. I said Birmingham. Say Birmingham. Say Birmingham. No pun intended. From that, he wrote the letter from Birmingham jail. And then I was arrested June 5th that year for inciting the riot. Though in fact, it was just nothing but a trumped-up charge. But we were protesting, and we would not back down. Meg Evers was killed June 12th of that year. And then the big march for jobs and freedom in Detroit of that year. Then Dr. King spoke at the Washington March August 28th. But there is a context to that speech. We speak so much about the dream. I might add, he spoke August 28th, and the baby was bombed in Birmingham in September 15th in the church. And then a month later, Robert John Kennedy was killed in Dallas, Texas. It was a year of tumult and rising up, fighting to end an unjust, limited system. But he does not start off the speech talking about dream. He says, Mr. Lincoln, we stand in your majestic shadow. And you promised, after 246 years of legal slavery, where blacks were the #1 resource in the country, more valuable than banks, insurance companies, of land, was black work without wages. was African raw product without contracts. The most valuable source of wealth in America and Britain was slave labor of African people. So here we are at the foundation of great civilizations, and on the bottom, the top of production, the bottom of access. And then there was a civil war. And that war was to save the Union, to keep the South from seceding, reconnect with Britain and with France, a kind of act of treason. And yet we won the war to save the Union of states and to end slavery. And we had the great promise that because we joined the Union, because we joined the right side of the struggle, that we would be freed as people, that we would have our human rights affirmed, we'd have equal protection, we'd have the right to vote, the right to marry, the right to own land, the right to worship as we please. We had these freedoms promised to us, and now here we are today, 100 years later, a century later, from Texas to Florida to Maryland, we can't use a single public toilet. Black soldiers have to sit behind Nazi prisoners of war on American military bases. Our money is counterfeit. We cannot buy ice cream in the front door of Howard Johnson. We cannot use the public library 100 years later. Congress, you promised the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. You promised, and yet we are here today. I refuse to believe a nation so great as ours, with such power to conquer ancient foes, you cannot honor your promise. Promissory note, bounce check, marked insufficient funds. That was a great transition. But I don't give up on a great nation like the USA or Britain. I don't give up. I dream of a day beyond our predicament. I dream beyond our predicament, when we can go to the zoo or to the public park based upon our will and our person, our character, not be locked out by our color. That was the context of that statement. Because we could not go to the zoo. We could not go to the skating rink. We could not go to the pool to swim. Black kids in Georgia or South Carolina, we can only wish we could go to the zoo, except on very special occasions. I dream of one day my kids were able to go there based upon their character, not locked out based on color. I dream. That's power in dreaming beyond your circle. Say, literate people. Say, literate people. Say, literate people. People who think and imagine can create beyond their circumstances. Literate people who dream in a hole can dream a mountaintop. Literate people who are locked out can dream of getting in. Literate people can dream of becoming doctors, not just patients. Literate people can dream of becoming lawyers, not just counseled. Am I here by myself today? Dreaming. And so it is that we kept dreaming. The 63 dream is not the 68 dream. It was not one dream. The dream was a living dream. So in 63, the dream was to end barbarism. The idea that you cannot use a toilet because of your race. You cannot use a library because of your race. It's just barbarism. The dream of 64 was a law to make that behavior illegal. We won that battle in 64. The dream of 65 was the right to vote for all human beings, not just by color, but by citizenship. And so blacks had the right to vote in 65, but guess what? White women in the South couldn't serve on juries. They got their rights affirmed. By 1970, 18-year-olds, those serving in Vietnam could not vote. They got the right to vote. By 1974, we got the right to vote on campuses. By 1975, we got the right to vote bilingually. By 88, we got something called the right to our votes to count proportionally and not one to take all. So the democracy, we democratized democracy by dreaming. Dr. King was killed in 68 on the balcony in Memphis. By 08, we were on the balcony at the White House with Barack Obama. We never stopped dreaming. We never gave up. We never gave in. We never gave out. Say dreaming matters. Say dreaming matters. Dreaming matters. Cynics don't dream. The cynics don't dream. The negatives don't dream. Those who give up don't dream. If I am to be, I must dream. I must dream beyond my situation. This is John on the Isle of Patmos, put out there and left to die, to be devoured by scorpions, left to live without food, to live and die in his own mess. But from that lowly place, he dreamed of a new heaven and a new earth. The old woman would pass away, and God would wipe away his tears. Said, no matter my predicament, I may be isolated, I may be marginalized, I may be underestimated, but I have the power to dream beyond my predicament. And literacy and learning and labor empowers me to dream. Lastly, Dr. King, I was with him the last week of his life. Sometimes dreams, when attacked, become nightmares. And yet leadership must look out of the windshield, not in the rearview mirror. There's a danger that we'll get trapped looking in the rearview mirror and discussing over and over again what was and not imagining what must be. In that last staff meeting on a Saturday morning, he called us late on Friday night and said, meet me in Atlanta. Most of us who are around the country didn't want to go because it was called so hurriedly. And he said, but come. And so we came. He said, for 4 days I've had a migraine headache. My wife, Coretta, and his wife, Jean, Ralph, his wife, Juanita. I thought maybe I should quit. Maybe I've done as much as I could do in 13 years. As I fight to end this war, to shift from war on Vietnam to war on poverty, a war where they're using napalm and Agent Orange, where they've killed 3 million Vietnamese with these chemicals and these napalms dropped on them, burning people alive. I cannot bifurcate my sense of justice and morality. And money is designed to relieve poverty at home is being used for war in Vietnam. And bombs dropped in Vietnam will explode in our own cities because of neglect. And maybe I have done as much as I could do. And I hear Andy Young saying, Dr. King, don't talk that way because we all felt a bit sad. He said, Andy, don't say peace, peace, and there is no peace. Let me talk. We all got very quiet. He then said, but I can't quit because if I do, people who never gave up, like Frederick Douglass and people like those who never stopped marching, would never understand. So I can't quit. He said then, but maybe I thought our movement is in some disarray, some disunity. Maybe if I would fast to the point of death, that my friends, with whom we may have strategic differences, but we're basically friends, will come to my bedside, and we can rally around each other and regroup and have prayer at my bedside, and we come out together. Then he said as if a burst of light came over, but we must move on to Memphis and fight for the garbage workers, and on to Washington and set up resurrection or a tent city, put poverty right in the back door of the White House in the face of the Congress, and demand a job or an income or health care for every American. I believe that for every mind there must be education, for every body there must be food. I believe it can happen. We have the resources. It's just unfair the way we're distributing our resources. And so we're going on to Washington. His last speech was to be about wiping out poverty and ending war, shifting from war investment to peace investment, as Isaiah would say, beating swords in the plowshares. So were the drones of that day, beating swords in the plaister and spears in the pruning hooks, and studied the war no more, because you do what you study. You study bombs, you're going to figure out how to drop them. You study napalm, you're going to figure out how to use it. You study Agent Orange, you're going to figure out how to use it. You got weapons of mass destruction, you've invested money, you're going to use it, and then get some more scientific ways to kill. And so he said, we're going on to Washington and make our case before a great nation. And what struck me about it was the three moves were the three moves of Jesus. As in, number one, as he came to that moment, let this cup pass from me in Gethsemane. Because he felt the burden of his work and how his own disciples were turning against him and becoming pawns of the government. And he said, let this cup pass. And then he said, as he prayed, that some of his disciples slept as he fasted and prayed. And then he said, when this burst of light came, not my will but thine be done. There is a thy will moment that comes into our lives, a thy will moment. Not mine, but thine be done. And so it is that he left us on a higher note. He didn't just reflect on where he had been the 13 years from 55 to 68. Didn't just reflect on the period of slavery and segregation, but he looked at the windshield and talked about the wiping out poverty and lifting up the poor. And so it is that our mission in America today is revive the war on poverty. Extremes of wealth and poverty. The very wealthy not because they worked harder, because they've been subsidized. And the banks collapsed to bail out the banks, but locked out those who have been victimized by bank misbehavior. We bailed out insurance companies. AIG at $175 billion, but let Detroit and Birmingham go bankrupt. We bailed out the very wealthy and subsidized them and locked out middle-class workers, and we globalized capital without globalizing human rights, without globalizing workers' rights, without globalizing children's rights, without globalizing women's rights, without globalizing environmental security. And so it is that imbalance of globalization that now has us in such radical extremes of the surplus and the deficit culture and the sinking middle class. So he dreamed beyond the windshield. Today we must revive a war on poverty. You mean in a nation as great as this, you got 60% young black youth unemployed? Where do they go? They're not going to Oxford. Where are they going? They can't get a job. Where they're going. They've stopped dreaming and started scheming. Where they're going. They are next door neighbors. Where they're going. Who are they? Well, they're ours. They're ours. It's Jesus in the one lost sheep. He says, I cannot rest until all my sheep are accounted for. He says that the 99 have come. And someone says, why are you worried about the one? Because you got 99. You have the majority of them. You got the majority. You got the sheep that are in power. Those sheep heard you. Maybe my lost sheep has a hearing defect, less obvious to the eye. Maybe my lost sheep got kicked by a bigger sheep. Maybe it was slow. Maybe my lost sheep stepped in a hole. We step in holes sometime, you know. Maybe my lost sheep got bit by a snake. It may be trapped in barbed. I don't know why it's lost. I don't know whether it's black or white or gay or straight. All I know is mine and it's lost. So all I know is mine and it's lost. And if it's mine, it matters. Say if my sheep is black or white, male, female, gay or straight, tall or short, no matter the language, if it's lost and my sheep, my divinity is at stake. I'll not rest until the lost sheep find succor and find strength and find security. In a real sense, that's what we are. As we seek to wipe out poverty, student loan debt is now greater than credit card debt. Good minds cannot afford to go to school. Others can't stay. Others graduate without a job. We seek to end growing unnecessary wars. Here we are trapped today. Literate, civilized people. We're going to Iraq illegally. We begged Bush and Tony Blair, don't go. Had the big rally here, 2 million strong in Hyde Park in London and around the world. There must be another way. Let's try negotiation over confrontation. Let's think it out and not shoot it out. Let's figure this thing out. And yet they were determined to go on a false lead, preemptive strike, broke international law, and they went into Iraq. Killed over 100,000 Americans, more than 6,000 U.S. and British soldiers died because of that miscalculation, that quest for hegemony on oil. We made that big decision, and it remains unsettled today. It exacerbated the issue in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and now here we are trapped treating the Romans like non-people, and then Libya and Yemen and now Syria, and war has us with our backs against the wall. Somehow somebody must choose another way. And maybe that's our special charge, to choose another. We must choose peace over war. Joy over sorrow, love over indifference. We must see that all of us have advantage in relating and disadvantage in not relating. Can you imagine going to a track meet where Britain is involved and don't have black runners? We keep them because we have found advantage. Imagine having your big soccer match and no black players. We keep them, whatever our feelings are, because we found advantage. We must find advantage in educating all of our children, advantage in employing all of our people, advantage in health access for all of our people, because all of us matter, and no one knows where special genius is in the mix of the human family. I'll close on this note. The Bible puts forth an interesting formula for peace. By rational standards, it does not seem to compute. It says, where will we find peace? In effect. So we'll find peace when lions lie down with lambs. That does not seem to make sense, because lambs have enough instinct and experience to run from lions. They are slow and they are unable to fight back. And lambs sometimes are eaten by lions just because lions eat them for sport. They're just greedy and strong and fast. So what would make a lion want to cut a deal with a lamb? He's so strong and powerful. What would make a lamb trust a contract written by the lion? What allows lion and lamb to find common ground? This is not even Brit and Caribbean and African. This is lion and lamb, lowercase animals. Well, apparently what lions and lambs know, that no matter what our lionness may be, our lambness may be, neither one of us want acid rain on our back. Neither one want poison water. Neither one wants the forest to catch on fire. If lions and lambs can see that beyond their difference, that they have some things in common, they don't want the forest on fire. They don't want poison water. They don't want polluted air. If lion and lamb can find common ground, surely we can find common ground. If they can survive in the woods together, we can survive in Birmingham together. God bless you.